Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blanks and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Greetings, good people of the planet Earth and the known universe. You are listening to Golden State Media Concepts television podcast. This is your Captain Keith speaking. And on deck today, the new spinoff series, TV series, The Conners, the ABC network television show. And Doctor Who season 11, a whole new doctor. And boy, did they flip the script on this one. So let's get to it. So before we get into The Conners, let's go into a brief history about where that show's coming from. It's a spinoff of the show, the iconic American comedy TV series, Roseanne, which starred Roseanne Barr, and her family was the Conners, her and Dan Connor. This show was started October 18th, this month, 1988 to May 20th, 1997. So it was on for quite a long time. And then again, it came back this past March of this year, March 27th, and it went to May 22nd. And it was lauded for its realistic portrayal of a working-class American family. The series reached number one in the Nielsen ratings from 1989 to 1990. It was the only sitcom that rivaled The Cosby Show at that time. The Bill Cosby TV series and the Roseanne TV series were the top two TV shows in the country, literally. The series remained in the top 4 for 6 of its 9 seasons, and in the top 20 for 8. Let's see. And then apparently it says 1993, an episode called A Stash from the Past was ranked number 21 on TV Guide's 100 greatest episodes of all time. Okay. And in 2002, Roseanne was ranked number 35 on TV Guide's 50 greatest TV shows of all time. And in 2013, it was ranked number 32 on TV Guide's 60 best series of all time. So, and yeah, so last May 2017, May 16th, ABC had announced that they greenlit the revived 10th season of Roseanne as a mid-season replacement in 2018 with the original cast returning. The show did extremely well, and as you know, due to some statements made on Twitter from Roseanne Barr, criticizing a former Obama administration official, there were some remarks that were made. They were considered racist. And because of those remarks, the Roseanne show got canceled. Now, mind you, before this whole Twitter situation happened, the Roseanne show was greenlit for its second season. It was doing very well. So that was a bad situation, and it almost didn't get salvaged, but it was able to be salvaged. The rest of her supporting cast were able to keep it moving by doing a whole new show called The Conners, where Roseanne is no longer around. And the second episode aired this week. So, and besides, Miss Barr has already gone on online to report her feelings about how her character was written off. So it's no real big secret that her character was written off the show for The Conners. Basically, this new series, this new comedy, which has everybody but Roseanne. Still, you have the same chemistry and the same type of self-deprecating humor for this show. It's good. So, yes, Roseanne's character is killed off. I'm not going to tell you how her character was killed off. You'll have to watch the show to see. But we'll say that Miss Barr was not pleased with what the writers wrote in that regard. But at this point, because unfortunately, you no longer have a say in that series, although you did graciously give your blessing for the rest of the cast to continue. there's not much input that you're going to have in that regard anyway. So, so let me tell you about the show. So, because I didn't know what to expect when I watched it. Always loved John Goodman. I didn't realize how much I liked Sarah Gilbert as an actress until I saw her come back on Roseanne. I guess I kind of took her for granted or forgot all about her. You know, I see her on The Talk all the time, and it's a whole different vibe. And she's great on The Talk, don't get me wrong, but as Darlene, she's amazing. I like Darlene. I do. I think Darlene's my favorite character from that whole sitcom, from the series. Everybody's great. This was a great launching pad and vehicle, stepping stone for John Goodman. He's gone on to do amazing things as an actor in film. He is a treat to watch. So it's good to see him back in all of our American homes, in our living rooms again. It's good to see the whole family. And they all kind of look the same. DJ looks the exact same, just tall and grown. It's weird and eerie to see all these familiar faces again, but it's very cool. So let's get into what happened now, the aftermath. So the first episode opens up with the Connors, and the family's dealing with Roseanne's death, and they're just trying to cope. I mean, it's the same house, the same living room, and the intro is still the same. You just see everybody but her and the same music. So, you know, the synopsis was: a sudden turn of events forces the Connors to face the daily struggles of life in Lanford in a way they never had before. And I got to tell you, it's just, you just don't know how much you miss people until you see them again sometimes. I hate that. Maybe that's just human nature. But Laurie Metcalf as Roseanne's sister, I love watching her. She's great. She's just so funny. I have to give the props to the people who created this show. There's a reason why this show was iconic and why it's legendary. There's a reason why we like these characters. I mean, you know, a lot of time has passed, but when a show like this came on television and when a show like The Cosby Show came on television, there was nothing like either one of these shows. One was about an upper middle class black family. Other one was about a working class, middle class family that happened to be white. So, and both shows hit the mark. I know I grew up watching both, and I loved them both. They were, you know, for different reasons, and they were just funny. But yeah, so this show, I just forgot how good it is and how good it was. I just the writing doesn't disappoint. It's still very consistent. The humor is still very consistent. So like I said, so the first episode, they're dealing with the aftermath of Roseanne's death. They don't really talk too much about it. And see, Laurie Metcalf, her character, Jackie. I just laughed at saying her name. So Jackie's keeping herself busy. Jackie, you know, she wants to be there for her brother-in-law and her nieces and nephew, you know, and her grand niece and nephews. You know, she has this responsibility. She's the aunt. It's Roseanne's sister, and so she's always around the house doing busy things, and no one's saying anything to her because they know she's grieving, and nobody wants to talk about the fact that they're grieving. You know, they acknowledge that, you know, Roseanne's dead, but that's all. That's as far as they go. And it's Dan doesn't say too much, but Dan hardly ever does. But whenever he does speak, he's always funny. You know, he's in a situation now where he alone is the head of the house. You know, his life partner's gone, and they think that her passing was one way, and let's just say, you know, there's a lot of aftermath. There's a lot that has to be dealt with. And like I said, I'm not going to tell you how her character is written off, and, you know, specifically. But yeah, you just know that she's not coming back, that she's gone, and everyone's grieving. They're trying to figure out how to get on still. And what you do see is, like, in this episode, you get a chance to see DJ's wife, you know, and her name on the show is Gina Williams Connor, played by Maya Lynn Robinson, because before she was in Afghanistan, she's a soldier, so you didn't really see her when they brought this season back earlier this year. But now you're going to see more of her, and she's fun to watch and listen to as well. She's definitely a part of the Connor household. She's a character as well. So the grandkids, they don't seem to be as affected by the loss of Roseanne the way that, Dan is and his kids, Becky, Darlene, and DJ. And it's with the first episode, they spent a lot of time talking about there's a lot of scenes just in the home and just trying to just figure out how the day-by-day thing is supposed to go, and Becky is still Becky. She's just kind of a hot mess, but that's part of her charm. She's still working at the restaurant, I believe, as a bartender / waitress. I believe Darlene has a job, but I haven't really seen her go to her job. I know she's got one. And her son, played by Mark, who's Mark Connor Healy. In real life, he's Ames McNamara. Very, very optimistic young boy. He's definitely has a good heart, and he definitely is kind of part of the sunshine to that family. But so is his cousin, Mary, played by Jaden Ray, DJ's daughter. So the kids still have like this innocence and youth about them that you enjoy watching and seeing in the show, because everyone else is just so cynical and deadpan with their humor, but they're funny. And there's love there, but it's just really deadpan. And it's just, when you watch the show, you still have that gritty reality that people are just trying to make it and figure out who they are to each other. And, Darlene is still married and not divorced, but she's separated, and she's trying to raise her kids. That's why she moved back home. And now that her mom is gone, she feels like she has to take on more responsibility to make sure that her dad's okay. And like I said, and Jackie is there doing things around the house that she thinks needs to be done that Roseanne always wanted to do. And basically she's just trying to keep busy, because if she stops keeping busy, then she'll have to grieve. At one point there's a scene where Darlene's telling Jackie, hey, just go home and worry about this tomorrow. And, and Jackie's just like, well, she's like, yeah, I know. Eventually, within that, later on that episode, Jackie's just like, I don't want to go home, And this show also opens up with Jackie and Roseanne's mom there, and she's and her deadpan humor, and it's just so Jackie, and her mom are still living. They're living together, and it's just, the mother makes a comment that no one should have to bury their own child, and of course that's usually most parents' nightmare. That's that whole scenario. And what can I say about the first episode that was interesting to me? Oh, when Darlene's son, Mark, has some friends over to the house, and they speak to his grandpa. They're like, "I'm sorry for your loss." And one of the guys is like, "Hey, what are you gonna do? People die." And then Dan looks at the one kid who said that, and it was just a real tacky and insensitive thing to say. And he said to him, "Did you have a rough time in Nam?" Vietnam, like, are you a war vet? Because this young boy was speaking to Dan like he was a grown person, and he wasn't trying to be insensitive, but what he said was. But Dan, still being Dan Connor, he diffused it with his deadpan humor, and it was just a funny moment. Like, has his kid seen some action? Has he seen the war? What's going on with this kid? So, and then later, Mark wants to confide in his grandpa And, and the last season, it was kind of strained for for Dan, because he has his grandson who likes to wear clothing that's traditionally for girls. And, and Dan doesn't, that's not the generation that he comes from. We'll talk some more about that after this break.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
And once again, you're listening to Golden State Media Concepts television podcast. This is your Captain Keith, and we're talking about the new TV series, The Conners, which is a spinoff of the legendary, iconic American comedy show Roseanne. So as I was saying before, Dan Connor, played by John Goodman, he's got this grandson that is not, who is a little bit flamboyant, very sweet and nice. But he has his own fashion sense, and it's not the traditional clothes that boys wear. It's a mixture of, girl clothes and boy clothes. And so initially, when the season first came back, Dan was concerned about that. And, Darlene and Roseanne were upset. They didn't know whether or not Dan was just being what they thought might have been homophobic, or what was the concern about. Dan's concern was that he didn't want his grandson getting beat up because he's different. And he just wanted to make sure that, that his concern was listened to in that regard. So, but now with the Conners, in this episode, you see Dan and Mark do some more bonding after Mark's school friends leave the dining room. Mark asks his grandpa, for advice. And Dan's like, well, you got about 5 minutes before I leave the door, so sure. And he's like, well, what do you do if you like somebody? He goes, well, what's going on? Well, he's like, I like them both. I don't know who to choose, because he has a field trip he's going to go on, and he has to figure out who he wants to sit next to. So what was cool about the episode is that eventually Dan gets together with Mark, and they go over a list of pros and cons about both boys. And, one boy is like kind of a reckless bad boy, and the other boy is like really nice and sweet. So, of course, Dan's like, you should go for the sweet one, the nice kid, who comes from money. There was a joke in that, too, about how the one kid, his parents go on vacation to Florida every year, come back with tans. And Dan's like, oh, they must have money. Tell me more about this kid. So Dan's wheels are turning. Like, he's going to try to set up his grandson with the one boy. So after they make the list of pros and cons, Mark is like, well, he's going to go with the other boy, the one who's always wearing black, and it's kind of dangerous. And it's just it was just funny. And Dan's just like, what? Why are you picking that one? The other one's a keeper. And it was just really cool just to see that type of conversation between the two of them. And it is important to see that in families that, you're supposed to have unconditional love for your children, no matter how different they might be, that you don't stop loving them because they might be different. And that families all over the country and all over the world have children who may not be considered the so-called norm, whatever that is. But, love is supposed to be unconditional. So seeing the chemistry between Ames McNamara and John Goodman, it's pretty good. Mark Connor Healy and Dan Connor. It was cool to see that. I enjoyed that part of the episode a lot. And then, there is, like I said, Jackie's just kind of spinning out of control, just rearranging the house. At one point, she decides to shampoo the couch, and no one can sit on it for a day or two. No one says anything because they can see that she's grieving, and this is her way of dealing with it. And like I said, Laurie Metcalf does a great job with that role. This look she gets when she starts to act, in her eyes, it really is priceless to watch. So, and then DJ was always kind of like a mysterious kid. He was always the quiet one, the only boy in the family. He's all grown. He has a daughter now. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with his character and how they develop his character. Darlene, played by Sarah Gellar, was always the smart mouth. Her and her sister Becky, played by Alicia Goranson, they always go back and forth. They're legendary with their banter with each other. Just very funny. Darlene was always like the tomboy, and Becky was like, the popular blonde girl in school, the girly girl, and Darlene was exactly the opposite. And it's just the show is just very funny. Mary Steenburgen has a cameo on the show. She plays a person named Marcy Bellinger, and I'm going to say that when she comes into this episode, it's definitely a pivotal moment. I'll definitely say that. Definitely a pivotal moment. So look out for her performance and her role, so you can see what's going on with that. What else in regards to the show? Oh, looking forward to. So and then there's Harris, who's Darlene's daughter, played by Emma Kinney. Harris Connor Healy, teenage girl, has her own angst, very similar to Darlene, just quieter, but she's got the whole teen angst thing going. And you don't really know what's going on with her. She keeps to herself a lot, kind of a loner. And between Darlene and Jackie, they're just trying to help keep the family together for Dan, for his sake. And, you don't really see Dan do a lot of grieving at first. But by the end of the first episode, there's more things that are found out about what was going on with Roseanne, and when more information comes out, the family, their reaction is, it's, they have to deal with the aftermath of it. They have to, and John Goodman, during those scenes where you finally get to see him having to deal with that loss. Because for most of the episode, he's not saying too much, but towards the end of it, there's a reality that he's faced with that, just kind of hits him hard. Like with anybody who loses someone that you've been with for over 20 or 30 years that you've been married to. You can only imagine, how tough that's got to be. And then you got this whole family that's still depending on you. People have moved back home when they're supposed to be out in the world, and some of them were out in the world, but that world just didn't really work for them the way they thought it was going to. So the question is, well, so what's going to happen with the Connors next? Can they keep their world together? Can they make it different? Second episode, things change up a little bit. By this time, Darlene's ex, David, comes back into the picture. He wants to be a father to his two kids. And, it opens up with Darlene at a parent-teacher conference. And David's running. He says he's going to be there. And he shows up, but he shows up late. And he shows up with his new girlfriend, played by Juliette Lewis, who does a great job playing a woman named Blue. And I got to say that it's just a real tacky move to bring your girlfriend to a parent-teacher conference with, that you have to have with your wife about your child. Not a good look. So, of course, but Darlene, being the sarcastic, witty person that she is, keeps her cool, says a few says a few passive aggressive things that are funny in that regard. And at one point, David's just making these assumptions like, oh yeah, well, the kids will get to know Blue and wants to come sleep, spend the night before he's going to sleep over. And then Darlene's like, oh, when did you run this by me? And he said, you said that, they could come over. And at that point, you can see the tension and the awkwardness in the room between Darlene, Blue, and David. So the teacher steps out for a moment as David and Darlene discuss, their children. And then, she agrees that Mark and Harris can spend the weekend with him. So, and then in this episode as well, Becky asks if she can go work with her dad. Dan has his own construction company. And he wants to tell her no, but she's like, hey, I need the job. I can do it. So she goes to work for, Dan. And let's just say she finds out that she's not really cut for it. Dan explains to her that if there's any type of impropriety with what he does, he can lose his license and, for his business, his construction business, and he won't be able to take care of his family. So he tells Becky she's got to take the job real seriously. He kind of calls her out on something. And it's really, and then, once again, it's just, and then Becky's just realizing that she's got some things she has to work on. And that maybe she's not, she's not doing as well as she thought she was. So, so that's going on. And then, so in this second episode, which is called Tangled Up in Blue, Blue, like I said, that's David's new girlfriend. David is played by Johnny Galecki, who's of Big Bang Theory fame. People don't realize, unless you're a Roseanne fan, he got his big break and start on the Roseanne show, playing David, Darlene's boyfriend, high school boyfriend. High school and maybe college, I can't remember. But so it's good to see him back on the show too. And Juliette Lewis's character Blue is great. She's basically like this hippie, just new age person who is just all about having good positive energy and keeping things open and communication open. And when you meet her and she's at the parent teacher conference, she acts like she's known David's kids all of their lives, and she hasn't. So she's a little too relaxed and too verbally familiar with someone else's children. So you can tell that Darlene doesn't really care for her, and then Darlene takes it like a champ. She just, most people might have just gone off. Most moms would have went off on David, like, how dare you bring your girlfriend to our kids' parent-teacher conference? It's just really tacky and inappropriate. So she didn't say that, but she got her little passive-aggressive jabs in. They were pretty funny. And like I said, she begrudgingly lets the kids spend the weekend with their father because he's trying to be more present in their lives. And then then there's a scene where Darlene, Jackie, and Becky are at, I think, Becky's bar where she works. And Jackie's encouraging Darlene to go out there and date. And Becky and Jackie are trying to scope out the men in the bar, see who's working from who's not. And that scene's pretty funny, actually. I enjoy watching all that. And Darlene's just like, well, I just don't, basically, she doesn't need any drama from any man right now. She speaks that, and then this brunette guy comes up to her and asks to buy her a drink. And when she turns around and sees him, she just kind of her whole face just lightens up. It was just kind of funny to see the exact opposite of what she said when she gets approached by a single guy in the bar. And then the single guy can't figure out what drink to buy her. So then Darlene eventually tells Becky what to give them both. And he goes from there. And then basically Darlene tells him, because he's kind of nervous talking to her. And he's like, oh, I love your curly hair. And he's like, oh, you probably hate your curly hair. It's probably the exact opposite. Darlene's like, hey, look, excuse me, but I'm a very direct person. So Were you saying all this in hopes of you and I having sex? And he's just like, well, eventually. And she goes, oh, don't, that's okay. No, I was already thinking about that. And then it just goes from there. And it's just, that whole scene in the bar is just really funny. Really enjoyed that. But there are some hiccups that happen when Harris and Mark go spend the weekend with their dad, David, in Blue. Let's just say that Darlene's not pleased. And then, it opens up a whole new conversation. And I have mixed feelings about that conversation that was had and the things that went on in that episode in that regard. But it's definitely worth watching, and it's a good show, and it's definitely has some great conversation pieces to talk about. And, it's a great study on the American family from back then and now, the big differences, and what is acceptable from what is not, and how do you deal with the different scenarios that come up. So I'm enjoying the show so far. I'm liking it. It's really good and it's different. So, and we'll be back and talk about Doctor Who after this break. So once again, that's The Conners on ABC. Check it out. There's 2 episodes in, and it's already like the number 1 show, according to the ratings. As far as ABC is concerned, that's what they say. So, hey.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast. This is your Captain Keith speaking, and we just finished talking about the new series, the new hit series, The Conners on ABC. So according to ABC, it's the #1 comedy show, at least on ABC. So there it is. So now I want to talk about the legendary, iconic Doctor Who. You're like, Doctor what, Captain Keith? Doctor Who. Yes. So let's talk about this amazing science fiction series from back in the day. Doctor Who follows the adventures of the title character, a rogue Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey, who goes by the name The Doctor. The Doctor fled Gallifrey in a stolen TARDIS. TARDIS stands for the acronym Time and Relative Dimension in Space, a time machine that travels by materializing into and dematerializing out of the time vortex. The TARDIS has a vast interior but appears small on the outside, and is equipped with a chameleon circuit intended to make the machine take on the appearance of local objects as a disguise. Due to a malfunction, the Doctor's TARDIS remains fixed as a blue British police box. This is true. The Doctor often finds events that pique their curiosity and tries to prevent evil forces from harming innocent people. So let me rephrase that. The Doctor often finds events that pique his curiosity and tries to prevent evil forces from harming innocent people or changing history, using only ingenuity and minimal resources, such as the versatile sonic screwdriver. The Doctor rarely travels alone and often brings one or more companions to share these adventures. These companions are usually humans, owing to the Doctor's fascination with planet Earth, which also leads to frequent collaborations with the International Military Task Force Unit. When the Earth is threatened, the Doctor is centuries old, and as a Time Lord has the ability to regenerate in case of mortal damage to the body, taking on a new appearance and personality. The Doctor has gained numerous recurring enemies during their travels, including the Daleks and the Cybermen and the Master. who's another renegade Time Lord. So that's a good synopsis. This show was originated in 1963. So it's over 48 years ago. That's crazy. My first exposure to this, there's this channel back in the day called Channel 62, and it would always show these cool, far out, different types of shows. And I remember seeing this guy with curly hair and his, and like this like trench coat with these long scarves, and he would walk around with a hat sometimes. And he had this like computer robot named K9, and he was Doctor Who. And I just thought his name was Doctor Who. I didn't know it's Doctor Who because you don't know what his real name is. And he was played by Tom Baker at the time. And I loved the show, and I loved the music. Yeah, the special effects back in the 80s was kind of campy, but it was still cool to watch. Just the whole premise was amazing. Can you imagine being a Time Lord, which means that you're older than most people and you've seen so much, and you're responsible for making sure the history doesn't fall out of place. So you're responsible for sometimes changing history because sometimes it needs to fall out of place, and sometimes you need to put it back in place. And can you imagine trying to figure out the wisdom and knowledge to know the difference? So, and then in the beginning, the Doctor would have like his granddaughter on the TARDIS with him. He had children and grandchildren, but time changes everything, literally speaking. I wasn't even planning on saying that, and I did. So what's cool about the show, like they said, the Cybermen, the Daleks, and the Daleks have this really eerie, just creepy robotic voice. Exterminate, exterminate. And it's a lot of fun to I enjoy watching them. I really do. And when his time machine, the TARDIS, is out in space, going materializing and dematerializing, it always makes this certain noise. And maybe one day behind the scenes they'll let me know how they came up with this noise. It's almost like a sled or a grating. It's just hard to describe that noise, but I know when I hear that noise, I know the TARDIS is somewhere around, about to pop up. So the Doctor has gone through. So what happens now? Being a Time Lord, I found out, and I was consulting with a colleague earlier before, while doing this podcast, because I want to have my research together. Apparently, Doctor Who is over 2,000 years old. The Time Lord himself, the Doctor. And so now what's interesting and fascinating with these Time Lords and Gallifrey, their planet, is that at one point, the Doctor believes that let's just say that he is a loner. He doesn't start off alone. Like I said, he initially started off, I believe, with his granddaughter on the TARDIS with him. So he had part of his family with him when he was making his journeys. Now, what's cool about the Time Lords is that because their lifespan is so vast, like if physical harm comes to their body, they'll go through a regeneration process, which means they'll have how do you describe it? It's not that they're in a coma. I mean, they wind up falling asleep, but the body recharges and regenerates. And if the Time Lord, if the Doctor's body is physically harmed and it's like fatal, it forces the body to regenerate into and basically become a whole new person. Same Doctor, but a new body and a new face and a new voice. So that's what happens. And like I said, this Doctor is over 2,000 years old, which means there's all kinds of history that he's seen. And being a Time Lord, he's traveling throughout the whole universe. Yeah, he pops up on Earth, but he pops up on other planets too, and he engages with the people that he meets. And it's just cool to watch his respect for other people in their culture and how he likes to help out whenever he can. He always figures out and finds out that everywhere he goes, there's somewhere where he was needed to be. So that a cool thing is what happens when he brings on companions, different people that he's met along the way who wind up seeing who he really is and they wind up being intrigued by it and want to be a part of it, and go on these adventures with the Doctor. And that definitely happens. So now, basically 11 years ago, the franchise got rebooted. So, and what they did by rebooting the Doctor Who series, they continue it from the original series. It's like, even though it's a whole new series and it's been on for 11 years, it's connected to the original series. So they don't start over with, they're starting over with new doctors, but the number of doctors is still the same. The lineage is all still there. And there are some episodes where you see all the doctors together, in the different incarnations of who they are. So, and the cool thing about when the Doctor has to regenerate and become a whole new Doctor and a whole new actor, it's a whole new vibe to Doctor. There's a whole new personality added to who he already is, which is really interesting. So I want to mention that. Now, what's going on? So the most notable Doctors, I would say, at least for me, would be Tom Baker and David Tennant. David Tennant's considered like the rock star Doctor Who, the good-looking, flamboyant rock star. He might have been like the first Doctor Who sex symbol. Very popular Doctor Who. He stands out, and for me, one of my favorites is Matt Smith, who succeeded David Tennant when he left after 3 years. Matt Smith, it's one of my favorite doctors from Doctor Who because he played it very well, the whole young man with the old soul thing. I've never seen any of the Doctor Who's do it the way that he did, and he was great at it. David Tennant was just mesmerizing as Doctor Who, very charismatic, probably the most charismatic Doctor Who of all of them. Tom Baker is one of the most popular ones. He held the title as the longest serving Doctor Who. He went past 3 years playing that role. But yeah, David Tennant is like the rock star Doctor Who. He's the flamboyant one, the one that gets ladies' attention when they see him, when he speaks, when he looks at them. And like I said, Matt Smith is the young man with the old soul Doctor Who. I like him a lot. He got succeeded by Pete Capaldi, who was an older Doctor Who liked to play guitar, and he was more of a Scotsman Doctor Who, the Scotch Englishman. So everyone brings something a little bit different to the role when they take it on. So now, there's all kinds of things, and there's all kinds of loose ends in the Doctor Who universe that have not been straightened out. Some storylines that need to be explored. So only time will tell in that regard. But I will say this though. So Pete Capaldi did season 10, and now he's gone, and now we're in season 11 of the new Doctor Who. And there's some controversy about what's happened now because, when they revived the show and they went with this new Doctor who is Christopher Eccleston. So he did season 1 of Doctor Who when he did the reboot 11 years ago. He did a great job, but he only did 1 season. And after that first season, David Tennant took over. And from that point on, each Doctor gets 3 years, and then they get a new Doctor Who. So, and apparently Christopher Eccleston was not happy with how the show was being made, or certain people who were producing the show, so he decided to go. And I still wish that he would have did 2 more years with it. I wish he would come back and just do those, do everything leading up to the first season, because we never got his real backstory. We just got 1 season with him, and he was great. He was the jump off. He set it all in motion for us, and he's still beloved by all of us. He did a great job as Doctor Who, but I'd love to see him come back and do like 2 more years, and just do the backstory leading up to that first season with him and Billy Piper. But so everything got set in motion. Everything was great with Doctor Who. So after Christopher Eccleston, it was David Tennant. Then after David Tennant, Matt Smith. And after Matt Smith, Pete Capaldi, who got. So at one point, we were thinking they were going to keep Doctor Who young because they had Matt Smith and David Tennant, to keep the younger generation. Then they flipped the script and gave us Pete Capaldi, who's an older Doctor. And that went well. I liked him. He played guitar, Scotsman. He was pretty cool. I dug him. He could be kind of dark and kind of mean, but he was still good. And we'll talk some more about that after this break.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And once again, you're listening to Golden State Media Concepts television podcast. This is your Captain Keith, and we're talking about Doctor Who. And we're about to get into season 11 with Doctor Who. So, as I said before, Pete Capaldi, was the older Doctor. So we were like, oh, okay, they're going to go back to doing the older Doctor Who now. Because, we were getting these young guys doing it, and we hadn't had any young guys for a long time. Since the Tom Baker, was it Pete Davidson era. So, Pete Capaldi's gone, and now season 11 is amongst us. So what do? They say, hey, but wait, there's more. So they flip the script again, and now for the first time ever, we have a female Doctor Who. So, quite controversial because, that we never thought that was going to actually happen. Doctor Who is a Time Lord. He was this guy who was a husband and a father and a grandfather. Now, all of a sudden, with this last regeneration, he regenerated into a female. So that was different. Didn't see that coming. Of course, there's people who are like, well, it's not really Doctor Who if you're making it into a lady, because now all of a sudden the Time Lords from Gallifrey, are they unisexual? Are they, what's going on? Because we never seen that before. But now in season 10, I believe, and maybe even season 9, his arch nemesis, the Master, wound up being a guy and then also becoming a woman at the same time. And at one point, they both versions of the Master cross each other's paths. So, and maybe that was their way of warming us up to the fact that we're going to do that with Doctor Who as well, switch genders on them. So the new Doctor Who for season 11 is played by Jodie Whittaker. Great actress. I know of her from the TV series Broadchurch, which is a show that David Tennant did after he left Doctor Who. 3 seasons where he plays a burnt out detective in a small town who has to find out solve a murder. And Jodie Whittaker plays the mother of the murdered victim. And she does a great job. So I did not realize that she was going to be the new Doctor Who. So, of course I had reservations because I'm used to Doctor Who being a certain way. And he's been this way for over 40 years. And now I'm like, well, what are you guys doing? And then I watched it and she was great. I like her performance. It's interesting. It wasn't the route that I would have chosen for Doctor Who, but I'm enjoying the show. I've seen the first 3 episodes, and they're pretty good. There's a new intro for it, and then by the time you get to see the TARDIS, it's got a whole new look. But she's good. I like her. She's likable. It's cool, and she's got some new companions, and seeing them, Tosin Cole and Mandip Gill are her companions. Ryan and Yazzie. It's it's interesting. It's cool. So when they first meet her, she basically falls out of the sky. It says, in a South Yorkshire city, Ryan Sinclair, Yasmin Khan, and Graham O'Brien are about to have their lives changed forever as a mysterious woman, unable to remember her own name, falls from the night sky. So what we don't tell you, or I might have mentioned a little bit earlier in the podcast about Doctor Who. So whenever there's a regeneration, there's like this hibernation period, not a coma, but a hibernation, a sleeping period where, he usually has to sleep in order to rejuvenate his body, get his mind, his energy back, heal his body, and get all of his memory back. So his sleep can't get interrupted. It can, but it can't for long. He has to finish sleeping so his body can heal itself, so the regeneration can be complete. And so that's what, Doctor Who, Jodie Whittaker's character has to go through. So when she falls from the sky, basically, as this mysterious woman, Ryan, Yasmin, and Graham, they're just like, they're not really believing in aliens. They don't know who she is. They just think she's kind of strange. And, there's some things going on. There's a murder mystery happening. There's a new alien popping up. And it's good. The first episode was really good. It's called The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Because I'm like, okay, well, I'll check it out because I have to see it because, I love my science fiction. And, she has a whole different look than from Broadchurch. So, I mean, if I didn't watch Broadchurch, I wouldn't have known that it was still her. But her energy, her performance of the Doctor is good, And then, there's some stuff, too, like when he regenerates or when she regenerates, when he becomes she, I'm confused now. She doesn't know that she's a she yet until someone tells her that because she just assumes that she's still a guy, So then she's like, I have to get used to this. And then it almost sounded like maybe this may have happened to her before. She didn't sound too surprised that she regenerated into a woman. So maybe there's going to be a new future backstory for Doctor Who that we've never seen before. Or maybe that's just a tidbit that they never really talked about because there's no big deal where they're from. I don't know. But the story opens up, Ryan is on YouTube talking about how there's a special woman in his life and he wants to, give a tribute to her. So when you're watching that, you're thinking, well, is he talking about the new Doctor Who? I'm not going to tell you who he's talking about, but the episode opens up in a very weird, strange way, but cool, very cool. It was just very weird. I love to talk to the writers about how they wrote the opening scene because I just don't know where that came from. I just don't, and why they even did it. But I haven't forgotten it, so there it is. The second episode was called what? The Ghost Monument, I believe. And in that episode, they what happens is that the Doctor and her new companions get sent somewhere to a different planet. And they have to deal with it. Well, see, I don't want to give away too much, but everything kind of just starts happening all at once. And then the people, Ryan, Yasmin, and Graham, they have to start adjusting. And with these new companions, it's different. Usually you have one, maybe two companions, but never like three. So this is a whole new take on it, and I'm enjoying it. And when you see them on this planet, they have to go through some things to try to, they're put a task. They have some adversity they have to overcome, and it's very interesting to see. I enjoyed it a lot, and you get to see everyone kind of come together, and you get to see it's you get to meet some other aliens, and you get to see their the Doctor and her companions meet two people, and the two people they meet couldn't be more different than, they're as different as night and day. And it's just very compelling and interesting to hear their backstories. I enjoyed the second episode a lot. I just finished the third episode yesterday, and that one was interesting because let's just say I got the feeling that this episode may have been filmed in America because it had an American storyline to it, a very famous storyline that I never thought the Doctor Who would be covering. So it was very interesting and fascinating to see, and I enjoyed how they portrayed it. I'll just say it's a major historical moment in American history. I'm not going to tell you the time period, but the Doctor and her companions have to go back in time, and let's just say it's just not an easy fit when they do, and there's some adjustments that have to be made because of the time that they go back to. But I really enjoyed watching it. There was only one thing that bothered me about one of the scenes I thought was kind of unrealistic, but outside of that, I really enjoyed watching all of it go down the way it did. Very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing where this season goes. The look of the TARDIS is really nice on the inside. They changed it up. Even the intro is nice, and they always do that too when they have a new Doctor. They always change up how the intro of the show, and sometimes even the music. It's just So Doctor Who is now Jodie Whittaker. So it's the first female Doctor Who. So I don't know where they're gonna go after this. In 3 years, with the regeneration. So because it's almost as if they're kind of writing the rules as they go. Now, to my knowledge, the way the whole regeneration thing got started was because the original Doctor Who from 1963 eventually died, and they wanted to keep the show going and had to figure out how to replace him. So they wrote in the whole regeneration thing, and they got a whole new Doctor. Same character, same history, but a new face, new voice with a new attitude. So once you write that type of story in to your series, it becomes an integral part of that character and that storyline forever now. And that's where we are now. So now, this is the only character that basically reincarnates himself, every so often, and still has all the same memories and history of his life, but it just has a whole new face. And his whole job is just to fix things and to show people the universe, when they want to come check it out. And maybe learn some more about himself and humanity. But the Doctor knows a whole lot. He's a pretty smart cat. He, or I have to say she now. See, for decades it's been he, now I have to say she, which is fine. It's just an adjustment, like when he regenerates, or when she regenerates. But I do enjoy the new companions. They're Ryan, Graham, and Yasmin. They're three distinct characters, and it seems like Graham and Yasmin have they seem to have their feet firm on the ground. They're a lot more sure of themselves. Ryan is still figuring some things out. He's good, but he's going through some things, and it's going to be interesting to see how these characters grow together in regards to what they do with the Doctor. And I'm just curious to see what type of storylines we're going to get for this season. But I really enjoy the show. It's on BBC America, a Doctor Who. It's been around forever. It's going strong. They've reached a whole new frontier with this new person who plays the Doctor, the new actress Jodie Whittaker. She's doing a great job. I'm looking forward to what happens. I'm looking forward to seeing if she's going to have get a new love interest. At one point, 2 Doctors ago, when Matt Smith was the Doctor, River Song was a woman who became his wife. So I mind you, the Doctor hadn't been married in a long time. And by the way, did I mention already, Doctor Who is apparently like 2,000 years old, somewhere around that time frame. So he's seen a lot, and he knows a lot of historical people throughout Earth's history, like on a first name basis with some of them. So that's always that's always fun to see and elaborate on when they go back and do those period pieces. So you never know where they're going to go. And the cool thing about this science fiction TV show is that you don't know what they're going to do, whether or not it's going to be a moment on Earth or a moment on a different planet. I like that they have that type of leeway where they can go back and forth. Everything doesn't have to be on Earth. So there's different planets, different aliens, different species that you see and you learn from. And then there's always the resident, they still have Old Faithful. The Daleks and the Cybermen, they'll never go away. But like I said, there was a new enemy and the woman who fell to Earth. And I'm interested to see where that's going to go. But, well, good people of the planet Earth and the known universe, you've been listening to Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast. This is your Captain Keith. And check out The Conners on ABC. It's a good comedy if you like comedy. If you were a Roseanne Barr fan or a fan of John Goodman, Sarah Gilbert, just that show itself, you won't be disappointed with The Conners. It's fun. That humor is still there, and it's still good to watch, and the chemistry is still there. Doctor Who, if you're looking for something different and new, check out Doctor Who. Look at that, and I rhymed. Wasn't even trying. I got bars for days. Anyway, thank you, good people of planet Earth and the known universe, for listening to GSMC podcast, television podcast. Hope you had a good time. I know I did. Appreciate you all. And until next time, see you somewhere out in space.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.